Now, it's a traumatic time for many parents, and singer Paloma Faith has opened up about how she felt going back to work after her second baby. She said guilt mixed with concern that they won't be looked after properly. Turns out she was fine. I wasn't. It always feels too soon, whether you are back like me after 11 weeks or if it's a year. She says it always feels too soon, but I suppose, can it be too soon? I think actually 2 weeks, you're not allowed to go back. You know, an employer isn't allowed to ask you back after 2 weeks. Most people take more. Well, how long did you take, Jane?
Do you know, I can't... With my first daughter, because I was a single mum and bills had to be paid, I went back to work really quickly. But I was slightly lucky I had my mum, so I didn't have the issue of, you know, having to leave her with somebody that I didn't really know. And I have to say, I didn't feel a shred of guilt because I was paying the bills.
It's funny, you immediately went to the word guilt. Why do we always go to the word guilt?
Well, because we're talking about parental guilt, and that's, you know, that's something that we always associate with women.
Sure, but, I mean, did it feel too soon? It can feel too soon without you feeling guilty about it. There's a slight difference.
No, it didn't feel too soon. I mean, I had no pressure to go back other than, you know, that once it gets to the point where the money starts to go down and you've got bills to pay, then, you know, but I just think with maternity leave, it's all about if you are lucky to have a choice and you want to go back soon or you want to go back later or you don't want to go back at all, great. Whatever you want to do. But obviously a lot of people don't have that choice. A lot of people do have to go back as soon as they feasibly can because they do have bills
I know,
to
I
pay.
just kind of pounced on the word guilt, I suppose, because if I think back, the one thing that I was jealous of Ian was, despite the fact he was a great dad, still is a great dad, I had no complaints about him being a dad, but he didn't feel guilt. And I did, no matter what I did, whether it was my choice, and I wasn't forced to do anything, I'm in a very lucky position. But whatever I did, even if it was my choice, I still felt the guilt.
It's funny, isn't it? Because at the time, I was a lot like Jane. When I had Zachary, I went back to college and I had to put him in the creche and I had to go to work to pay for just to have a child and to pay for college and to pay for his creche. So you just do what you've got to do and you don't even think about it. But I also get where you're coming from, Kaye, because I now, in hindsight, look back and I, for some reason, have a tremendous guilt for not being there for a lot of my son's life. I just wasn't there. I was studying and working and that was that. But at the time, I didn't think anything of it because it was just survival and you do what you've got to do. And I honestly believe that most people... Well, not most people, but there's a lot of people out there that don't have the choice of saying, should I go back now or shouldn't I? It gets to a point where statutory maternity pay isn't good enough and they have to go back. So
that's interesting.
About Zachary that makes you think, oh, he's, you know, been deprived. He's a lovely kid.
Yeah, no.
So it's on you. It's me.
It's a personal guilt I put on myself. It's really, but then I feel guilty the other way around. When I had Leighton and I was able to stay with him for longer and I didn't have to go straight back to work, it was much harder for me to put him into nursery when I finally let him go. So I have guilt over that. I mean, you can't blooming win, can you? You just feel like...
Well, no, you can't, whether you've got the... I mean, in some ways, if you've not got the choice, then you just do it, don't you? Because that is clearly the thing that you've got to do. You were a single mum, you were a young mum, you had to do it. When you've got the choice... Did you feel you had a choice?
Not really at the time. I mean, I was still really busy, so I didn't... And, you know, I didn't have maternity leave as such. It was kind of like you kind of needed to come back as quick as possible.
But like Paloma Faith.
Yeah, and I think because you're worried about your career still being there, and I kind of had guilt in a different way, in that I thought I would have kids and I would then say, you know what, and in a lucky position where I would say, you know what, I'm done now. I've worked from a young age. I'd quite like to just stay at home with my kids. And actually, once I had them, that wasn't enough for me. I still wanted to work. So I think whatever decision you make, whether you're going back to work, whether you're staying at home, you have guilt on both sides. And I feel like it comes part and parcel of being a mother. For some reason, we just have this pressure on that we put on ourselves, and we just feel guilty whatever we do.
Well, that's interesting. Where does the pressure come from? I mean, we did a poll on this, you know, asking people, did you feel pressured to return to work? 45% of you said yes, 55% said no. But the thing is, where is that pressure coming from? Because, like, with us, I suppose we kind of work in a weird world. There was nobody begging me to come back, but I wanted to go back because, it was a familiar world.
It's almost like a subliminal pressure as well, because if you look at, you know, wage statistics, a female's earnings go off a cliff at 29.
Yeah.
And, you know, what's the average age around the time that women start to have children? It's then, and you take time out of work. And maybe, you know, some people feel that they get written off when they take too long out of work.
Also, do you ever think there's like a subliminal rhetoric that says you can be a career woman and a mum and a this and a that, or you should aim to be all of those things and, have it all. So then you sort of are almost trying to do it all and realising you're not doing any of it to the full potential that you could be because it's almost impossible. But there is, like, a huge pressure on women.
Yeah. I'm interested you feel that, because Jane and I's generation, that was a huge thing. You can have it all. There was a seminal book, wasn't it? Was it Alison Pearson or who was it wrote this book? And it was all about you can have Maeve Harron. You can have it all.
And you had Nicola Horlick with, like, 5 children and still running in the city and all that.
Yeah. But I thought for your generation that had eased off, but it's not, no?
I don't think so. I think
we want... I think a lot of us as women, we want to aspire to be strong women who, you know, reach stages of our careers for us because we want to achieve things for our own personal journeys, but we also would love... Some of us would also love to have a family, and some of us would also love to have, you know, other things. And I don't think anyone ever really sits there and says it's OK to not be completely smashing every single one of those all simultaneously. I think a lot of the time we're kind of told, go for it all and that's fine. And if you're, if you're great and strong, then you can do it. But actually, there's so many times in my life where I've just had to accept that my parenting and being there for my children has suffered because I've gone for work opportunities and I've not been able to be there. And a lot of the time they can't run together with equally the same amount of energy going to both. And I think maybe this is about changing the conversation around that.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I think it's more about people being honest about how they do all those things rather than pretending that they just do it all on their own and it happens.
Yeah. We're our own worst enemies sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, at least we can